Welcome to the Thriving Tides podcast. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Julianne. If you're an entrepreneur who loves self-care, you're in the right place.
We can't wait to share our experiences with you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. So today we have a pretty interesting episode, and I'm actually really excited about this because I'm kind of learning more about it. But just to kind of get started, our bodies are pretty crazy. They're actually made up of 80% water, which, did you know that? I knew the premise of it.
Yeah, I've definitely heard it before. Right? I think we learned that through school and stuff. And
well, you never know with
but you
education.
don't think about it often. It's not something you think about on a regular basis.
Exactly.
Right? You kind of lose touch with it.
Exactly. And full moons, they affect the tides, and along with like gravity and other factors within the sciencey world. Not a scientist. So is it so crazy to think that because the moon affects the tides and our water, wouldn't it affect us being made up of 80% water? And this is something I've always kind of pondered, and I think a lot of people have pondered just based off of what I've seen on social media and everyone being so connected to the moon. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, Julianne?
I take a different approach, right? Which is, we love it. I always knew these things, I think, but never really connected them, right?
Yeah.
So you hear like, oh, the full moon's coming, look out, or whatever, but never really thought about it in the fact that it changes the gravitational pull and that, you know, the tides of the actual ocean can change, but because there's so much water in us that can make an impact too. Like, never connected those dots until today.
Right. And I think it's just like the little inner hippie of me. I've always kind of felt like we're all connected to the universe and the moon, you know, and it's funny because this isn't something that's new at all. Actually, the whole point of like lunacy or being like a lunatic actually comes from the word luna, which is a Latin word meaning moon. And the atic is the suffix of kind of, which I think is really interesting that we've always used being kind of crazy and insane, like lunatic, that has still the connection to the moon. So this isn't something new as history. We've always kind of felt super connected, and even ancient cultures have used the moon all the time. And the thing is, like, even nature is connected to the moon. But before we get into all this, we do need to kind of talk about where this is coming from. Because after October 2020 has been crazy. And the full moons are as crazy too.
Yeah. And we have 2 full moons this month.
2.
We start and end the month with a full moon, which is neat, right? So October 1st we had one, and then we have one coming up on the 31st, Halloween, blue moon.
I was going to say it's a rare moon, which is like rare. Super exciting.
And yeah, so we thought, let's talk about how this impacts us as individuals, because us being impacted impacts the way we run our businesses, the way we show up in our lives, and it's really fascinating also. So here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And plus it's just spooky. Now that as we launch this episode, it'll be into full spooky season.
Yeah,
so.
It'll just be a few days before Halloween. We should have wore our costumes, I guess. Oh, shoot.
Oh, I don't even have a costume. So
I don't either.
So, Julianne, what are your thoughts on the moon? I know you don't know too much about this.
And that's not her shaming me. It's so true.
We talked about this.
Yeah. I was laughing because I was like sitting there writing some notes about this. And I was like, what do I know about the moon? I'm like, well, I think it's cool. And it's beautiful. Like, I am always excited when I see a beautiful moon. Like, even just a few nights ago, we were driving home and I texted Steph and was like, look at the moon. It looks really cool tonight. Because I know that she would really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And when you're not outside, you don't really notice it. So, yeah. Like, what else do I know about the moon? Not a lot. Like, sometimes I'll wake up or I'll notice, like, I didn't sleep really well when, like, it's around a full moon or different things are happening. And I know people say, like, Oh, like teacher friends of mine especially say that they know when it's a full moon because the kids act crazy.
Yeah.
I've heard that too of people who work in mental health or in the psychiatric wards, that things can just get stirred up a little bit, I guess. So,
Oh, totally.
yeah.
And even I know my aunt was actually a cop. And she would always say like that she hated working on the full moons because it's when all the crazies were out. And it's funny because it's not the first time I've heard that. And even sometimes I will kind of be like, well, everyone's kind of on edge today. And I'll look at the lunar cycle right now and it's a full moon. And I'm always like, oh, duh, that's what's happening. Right. So that's why I'm so kind of torn, because I want to, the logic side of me wants to balance like the science, but then I'm also looking at like the anecdotal evidence of my life and like seeing people. And it's so, we are energetical beings without getting too woo woo. But is it so hard to believe that we could be affected? You know, and like you're saying that, you know, people that even themselves say, hey, I know that there is a full moon just based on my students.
Yep.
One thing that I did notice, like in the research, was actually that like science shows that people do lose sleep, a lot of sleep in the full moons, not only because of the light that's coming in from the full moon, but on a couple other different factors, you know, sciencey stuff. I'm not a scientist. Maybe I'll post the study in the comments when we're done with this. But I thought that was really interesting because even though you could say that it doesn't hypothetically affect us on that level where we're all going crazy, it could be that because we're getting lack of sleep, we're going crazy. Because, like, if you think about it, as business owners, you're told to always sleep to make sure that you have, like, your brain's functioning.
It's a big part of our self-care routine.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's where we're getting that kind of
Right. So if it's impacting and, like, one or two people, like, I mean, I have bad nights of sleep when it's not a full moon, too.
Yeah.
Right? It does happen. But if everybody or the majority of us have all had a very restless or terrible sleep, then maybe the combination of all of us being on edge, a little bit more grumpy, feeling like we need to be more caffeinated, just throws us all for a loop at the same time, which can, you know, diminish the results that we're trying to achieve that day.
Exactly. Exactly. And, like, scientists do say no to the theory that the moon affects us as human beings. Which, again, my hippie heart is like, I don't know if I fully believe that, even though you're a scientist, so I feel like I have to believe you. But one of my favorite scientists, I think we all know him, Neil deGrasse Tyson, actually said on Twitter once that the full moon exerts no more gravity on you than it does any other phase. So lunatics have no real excuse. And I thought that was a really interesting tweet when I was doing my research. And again, I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. So
you don't want to argue with him.
Yeah, I don't want to argue with him. He knows what he's talking about, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, because a question I had in the back of my mind was, there are so many different phases of the moon, right?
Yeah.
And we often emphasize the full moon being the one that impacts us the most. But I was curious to know, based on what you've noticed, because I know you've connected your own experiences more with looking at what phase are we in, things like that. Have you noticed any imbalances or changes in your well-being or your mindset or anything at different phases of the moon?
Yeah, so another reason why I kind of am happy that we're talking about the lunar cycle is when we started thinking about self-care, I actually purchased this book. Where are you? So it's called Lunar Abundance by Ezzy Spencer. I think I actually talked about it in one of our previous episodes.
Yes,
I have a feeling.
Did. Yeah, early on. Yeah.
Yeah, early on. And she kind of talks about the moon cycles. And I really liked that it talks a lot about, like, the yin and yang. And I like I said, I believe in science, and I don't ever want to discredit science. But at the same time, when I was going through this book, it made a lot of sense to me. And if you think about it, as humans, we're not supposed to live in full-on yang. and just kind of like the lunar cycles. We need the ups and downs of life. We need the time to have yin. We need to slow down. And I thought that was kind of nice with this book because it literally every single different moon cycle or moon phase, sorry, you would basically go in and out from yin and yang, and it would force you to think, okay, this is a yin phase. What can you be doing that will help you in like your self-care, or like it'll have journaling prompts, which is really cool. Not sponsored by this book, but it is a really good book if you're kind of interested in stuff like that. And it kind of goes back to like the self-care that we've been talking about too. And I think sometimes, and this is just my honest opinion, if you're struggling to if you're always on yang, and you find it hard to get into like the yin phase, I feel like using the moon cycle is kind of nice to kind of force you to think, okay, I need to take this time to have like a yin. I actually, I have a favorite cycle.
It's okay.
So the new moon is actually, in my honest opinion, a little bit more important than the full moon. In spiritualism, like the full moon is an ending in a sense, like not an actual ending, but more like
the cycle has completed.
Exactly.
And it's
like realizing your goals and everything.
Right.
Whereas your new moon is actually when you're setting those intentions, which I've always really liked because it forces you to kind of get more into the mindfulness practice and being one with yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because I've heard you talk about like you've done this new moon stuff
ritual
recently,
yeah,
right? Because we just had a full moon, and you have like a whole ritual. You have your manifestation, like you do all this different stuff, which I think is neat. And like I get really overwhelmed thinking like I'm very much, well, I would need to do it perfectly, and how is it supposed to look, and all that kind of stuff. But I love how you just like jump in and figure these things out for yourself. And I know I asked you a few weeks ago too. I was like, "What's your favorite moon?" And the new moon. You didn't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
You were like, "New moon." Yeah. So I'm like, "Okay, that's ingrained in my brain, just in case I ever need to pull that out again." But you have a very strong pull to it.
Oh, definitely. And just for example, in August we had a new moon. It was the 18th, I believe, and I had set an intention to actually be more patient because I like to control things. And if you know what I mean? Like, and patience is always a good thing to have anyway.
Doesn't
and
hurt.
Every time in my journal, and I would kind of remember that I've had set the intention to have patience. So when I would practice my yoga, my mantra would be patience, and journaling, patience. And anytime that I was dealing with a situation that had me frantic or frustrated, I would go back to say, okay, no. We had set the intention to be patient. So go back, Steph. Go back.
Back up.
And so then once the full moon came in September 2nd, that's when you have the chance to kind of reflect after what happened since that new moon. I don't pay attention necessarily to all the other moons, and I actually have it here. So just to kind of go over different kinds of moons, so you start with your new moon, it then goes into your crescent moon, then goes to your first quarter moon, and then there's the gibbous moon. After that, that's when you go into your full moon, and then from your full moon, you have to go back down to your disseminating moon. Disseminating moon. Words. And then you have your third quarter moon, and then your balsamic moon. And there's some of them have different names as well. And then you kind of basically restart the cycle. So yeah, I didn't really pay attention too much to the other cycles as much. I did when I was reading the book, but I find it can be too much too, because then you also put the pressure, I have to be in yin. But if energetically you're not feeling yin, I want to take as much opportunity to be in yang as possible, because I am a very yin natural person.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, why would I fight being yang? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting, and You like perfectly took me back to where I wanted to go. So thank
yay.
you. That's our yin and yang and how we
We're
tend
so
to do
yin
that.
and yang.
But when you were first speaking about the yin and yang, I'm just coming out of a full day of training, and something that we learned and talked about today was the being and the doing, and that really relates to the yin and yang for me, right? So the doing being the yang, the being the yin. And so whether it's the phases of the moon or whatever it is that helps get you there, we can't live in one side or the other at all the time.
Exactly.
And everyone has a different balance. It's not a 50-50 or anything like that. So we need to figure out, like, when do I need to be doing? When am I most energized to do that? And if there's different phases of the moon and that's what you recognize as being that pull to that yang or that doing for you, then how amazing is it that you have this chart now that you could follow and know, I'm probably going to have my most energy at this time. So if I need to sit down and create a course or some content or something like that, that's going to be the best time that I can work on my business and start doing this.
Exactly.
Or when I'm going to have more of a dip and I need to be centered in the being or the yin, how do I plan a little self-care day for myself at that time and make sure I'm not overloading myself with client demands or different things like that? So we can pull all this into our entrepreneurial journey and look at it in so many different ways. But like, yes, the science says one thing, but we know what we feel and we know what's coming up for us. So it's really cool to learn how do we allow that to happen and use it to our advantage.
Oh, exactly. And the thing is, too, with science, I struggle with it so much. But one thing that you said that made me realize, I would actually sometimes have a super productive day and my energy is just like on fire. And it's funny because I would look, just out of curiosity, the moon phase, and it was in a yang phase. And I've noticed that a couple times where I naturally follow that cycle without, because that's the thing too. Some people be like, oh, well, if you're planning that's going to be a yin phase, you're going to feel low energy. And so, and like, again, I always kind of go with a little bit of pessimism in there. And so it's funny that my anecdotal evidence shows that every single time I would still kind of align with that cycle. And like, I know for me personally, I like to stay away in full moons. I don't go out, which is okay because I don't have any plans for Halloween. Yes,
just in the afternoon.
I'm such an introvert sometimes.
Yeah. And is that like when the full moon is in the, like, it's dark and you can see it, or is that more like the whole day leading up to it? And like, does the full moon attach to the day before it presents itself? What about the day after? Like,
right? Oh, there's just so many things.
tell me all the things.
Like for myself, I prefer to stay in when it's dark more so. Again, I hear so many crazy stories. I have a lot of nursing friends who would say that it gets busier in the hospital. And that's why I think that it blows my mind, because one of the YouTube videos I was watching about this was like talking about how there's no actual evidence based on numbers. And I'm like, okay, all these people are saying that all these crazy things happen. And it's not like, I've heard this time and time and time and time again. You know,
time and
time again. And I find it hard to believe that there isn't numbers based on it. You know what I mean? And so like, that's why like I fight with it a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm sure if we dug hard enough to look at, you know, how many people show up at the ER on a full moon, or how many arrests are made, or, you know, different things like that, there might be more that information there. But I mean, I wouldn't even know where to go searching for that, and certainly not anything that anyone put in. But yeah, so you're gonna lay low this Halloween, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I was going to anyway. We're not really big Halloween people anyway. So
stay home and eat all the candy.
Yeah, watch a bunch of Halloween movies and drink pumpkin spice beer.
Sounds terrible.
Sounds terrible. I know. Hard life.
I just might show up.
Miss 2 parties.
Right. Well, we'll see. We'll see if I make it. Well, it's an interesting, well, I mean, this year's another challenge with it too. I mean, well, Halloween on a Saturday and a full moon, like normally.
And a blue moon.
And a blue moon.
Yeah. A rare moon.
That only happens once in a blue moon.
Yeah. Literally every 2.5 years. Roughly.
Yeah.
And another thing too that we kind of forgot about was the the full moon and the first was actually a harvest moon too. So October had 2 really big moon cycles.
Yeah.
So, which is crazy, I think, to have 2 big moon events. And if you do believe in the energy that it brings, like I want again, I find it really calming to listen to the astrology things, and they're going crazy right now. Like if you go watch any of them, they're like, there's big energy, and there's also we're in a Mercury retrograde right now until the 3rd of November. So there's also a lot of other crazy energy happening. And I don't know, I can see it. There's been a lot of miscommunication that has been happening. I've been laying really low just because of Mercury retrograde. And another thing too, just to kind of little tidbit, don't sign any contracts, people. But we'll have to do a whole episode on Mercury retrograde because I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes with like the energy that's happening in the world. There's lots. And when you put in like a pandemic, 2020 in a nutshell, the election coming up,
there's a lot happening.
No wonder why we're all
feeling a little uneasy or restless, maybe. Yeah.
Restless. That's a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And so, so Harvest Moon is how we kicked off this month. And then we're building ourselves up to this blue moon now, which is really cool too. And I have found very big highs and lows in my energy and every part of my being basically this month, especially. And maybe I'm more in tune. Maybe I'm looking more for it, but I've certainly noticed big changes. But like the last couple of days specifically, I feel like I could conquer the world. Yeah. And I haven't felt this excited and on fire and on top of things in a little while now. So I'd be curious to see, like, where is the cycle right now? What does that look like? Is that lining up? Because I'm certainly feeling some connection that hasn't been there recently. Maybe I'm about to defunk everything we just talked about, but we'll see.
I was going to say, we're actually so we're in a crescent moon right now. So that's technically a yin. As we record this, that is.
Yeah.
So technically, your intention should be to, I relax into my intention, I breathe. But tomorrow is the first quarter moon, which is a yang moon. And its intention, based off of Ezzy Spencer, is I take discerning action to support my intention. So it could be that you're ramping up, but you're also a naturally yang person too, right?
Yeah.
I find that, like, based on our conversations, you're rarely in yin unless you're forcing yourself to be in yin, or you
and
like
then
emotionally.
Am I really there?
Exactly. So maybe that's what it is. Look at me making all excuses for my lunar cycles.
And when this airs, it's going to be October 28th. Where are we going to be?
Let me get my little calendar.
Let's check the charts.
Check the charts. We'll be on a gibbous moon, so that'll be a yin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Exactly. And then that's when the next one will be the full moon, which is going to be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Right?
I think. I don't know. Is it actually going to look blue?
No. So I think it's...
Disappointing.
I wish I took notes on this because I was watching a video this morning and it's about when it happens. And I really wish I would have...
I skimmed over some info on it too. I just thought the rarity of it all sounded so cool. Like the last one that we had was May of 2019, and before that it was May of 2016, according to what I found.
Wow.
So that was a 3-year gap and then another 1.5 years. But we get another one sooner than we would expect. Like there's another one coming next August, so that's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool considering it's every 2.5 years.
Yeah, so maybe the phases maybe it's averages every 2.5 years, and there's longer and shorter cycles, but
yeah,
learn something every day.
Every day.
Every day. Is there any like part of your work routine or your self-care routine that you would change or adapt based on what's happening with the moon cycles?
Not really. So when I was following the book, I did, and I did notice that I actually was working more proficiently, which I thought was really interesting. So when I gave myself more of a yin and didn't book as many meetings, or like when it's supposed to be a yang, I don't know if it's the power of thought that I was like, oh, I'm in yang, so I'm therefore I am. Do you know what I mean? Like the power of intention can be huge, right? So maybe it's me thinking that I am being more yang, but in actuality, it's just my brain.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe I'm manipulating. But that's not a bad thing either, though, right? If that is all that it was. Now, I do find that when I do like my little new moon rituals and I set an intention, it does really help my work a lot, in the sense that I'm, again, more patient. I'm listening. I'm understanding. And I think that has been like paramount to my business, because I'm more compassionate, understanding. And if I know that chances are we're going through kind of an energetical shift, that it's not just me and someone's going through something too, it makes it a little bit easier in my head.
Yeah.
Anyway, because again, like when I go back to my emotional state and stuff, I tend to think the bad thing, that people are thinking bad things about me. You know, I automatically go to that shift. Whereas if I start thinking, okay, maybe it's the full moon, it's kind of, you know, the saying.
Blame it on the full moon.
Blame it on the full moon? Yeah.
No, I think we're supposed to blame it on the rain.
Blame it on the rain.
We never do an episode without singing anymore. People are going to stop listening. So yeah, we could blame it on the rain. We could blame it on the full moon, but full moons, from what I've read, also impact nature and different things too, right? So we've talked a lot about how we think it impacts us, or what we see or hear from other people that we talk to. But one of my favorite things that I read while I was reading all this is that sea turtles like to lay their eggs during a full moon, and I just love little baby turtles. So I feel like we had to give the sea turtles a little shout out.
Yeah.
But I think there's lots of animals and plants that are affected by the full moon. Of course, it makes the tides more dramatic with the gravitation. And you, like, I guess I don't normally think about it, but it'd be really cool. I mean, here in PEI, we obviously have tides all around us.
Hence
also
the name, Thriving Tides.
And you don't often notice much of a dramatic change when you're on the North Shore, but on the South Shore, you certainly do. So I'd be curious, and I haven't done this before, and I don't know that it'll happen this full moon, but to go be on the South Shore during a full moon would be kind of a neat experience, maybe being like right where the tides are shifting and so dramatically already. Like, what else might you see? Or like, do they just go that much further? What might that look like? So maybe next summer we should have a cottage night on a full moon and we'll experience it.
We'll do like spiritual rituals, and
hopefully we can have more people together at that point.
Yeah.
And maybe a little Thriving Tides full moon party.
That would be a lot of fun.
I was going to say hold us to it, but maybe don't. But like remind us, and if we can do it, we will.
Yeah, exactly. And here's hoping everything works out with COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's so true with nature. One of the things I was watching today, which I thought was really hilarious, was that the coral reef like gets it on.
Oh,
so at a full moon, they release kind of this, in a sense. Oh, I really wish I would have written it down, but.
I don't even think of coral
like, it's
reef
like fertilizer or something, and like that's when they get down, because they need, like, they know that this is the perfect time to do that because of the full moon.
Interesting.
Which I think is really interesting.
The tides, I wonder, play a role in that too. I don't know. Would they be impacted with, like, because they're down on the bottom, right? I don't know.
Although it's funny because
it's all related,
right? Although when I was in Australia, I didn't really notice the tides as much as I do over here for some reason. I don't know why. But I wonder if it is something to do with the tides. But I think it's more so like the light
like
of
how bright it is.
Exactly. Because they are technically like the plants, right? So So
They need
maybe
light.
that's what it is.
They get really excited.
But there's so many different animals. Like the list goes on, and you think of like circadian rhythms and stuff like that. And there's actual lunar rhythms too. And scorpions glow in moonlight or full moons, which I think is
like
really
blue
cool.
or something, which is really
blue.
cool. And it said like lions don't necessarily kill in the full moons because like it's so bright out, but then they might kill the next day during the day, which they normally don't hunt during the day. Like, so it just like throws us all off. We don't even know what we're doing.
And like that's why I think it can't. Why wouldn't it affect us then if it affects all these other things? That's where my mind always goes.
I'm not going to argue with you.
I say, am I changing your mind on
Maybe
the lunar?
You're opening it.
I was gonna say what we should do is actually get you to borrow my Lunar Abundance book by Izzy Spencer and have you go through and like, especially the forced yin. I feel like that might be really good.
It's true.
To try it.
I might go cray, but I'll try.
No,
I'm
it's
open
not
to
that
anything.
bad.
Yeah, it would be neat to explore it, right? And just see what comes up for me. So maybe I'll do a bit of that and I can share it on our stories.
Exactly. And she does touch a lot on especially like the feminine part and like the menstrual cycles as well, which is funny because that has also been shown by scientists that it's not true. But from like ancient times, like we're talking like Egypt times, they've always said that like our menstrual cycles are affected by the lunar cycle because is it just coincidental that we have the exact same amount of days in a lunar cycle as we do a menstrual cycle, so 29 days. So that's kind of where it started. And then again, when you think about hormones, how we go through like ups and downs with our hormones too, that as the moon cycle also goes through the ups and downs of like the different crescents and stuff. So could it be connected? I'm not sure. But according to science, it's not true. And the funniest part is there's actually a study which it was using the Clue app. I don't know if you've ever heard of that app. It's
I use it.
You use it? Yeah. So this actually kind of scared me that they're using this
how I know
data.
why I'm being really emotional sometimes. I'm like, oh, and then Clue goes, bam, your cycle's about to begin. Oh, thank you, Clue.
I'm going to go eat all this chocolate because of Clue. But yeah, that app actually used its users' data, so 1.5 million data cues, and it showed that there was no correlation to the lunar cycle and our menstrual cycles, which I thought was really interesting because if that's the case, then why in like things like this book do we talk about our our menstrual cycles being attached to the lunar cycle? What are your thoughts?
I've never really looked at it in that sense, to be honest. And I mean, without getting into too much TMI.
Yeah, sorry for our anecdotal male listeners.
We talk about anything. But my cycle, like my menstrual cycle, does not follow 29 days. It's kind of all over the place. And I just am grateful when I get my period, I guess. And nice to have a bit of regularity in my body. But I've never connected the two because mine's always been a little bit wacky on its own. But like hearing it, like the 29 days and the 29 days, like seems to make sense. Like I'm even thinking like gravity pull, like does that shift? Like it. Again, sorry, anyone who might be uncomfortable with this, but that's where my head was going when you were talking. So like I could see it. And like back in the day when, when you think about like Egypt days and stuff like that or whatever, we didn't have the Clue app. We didn't know any of this kind of stuff. So they needed something to help guide, right? And they also say that like females that spend a lot of time together might sync up. So there's like that whole aspect of things too.
I wonder if that's true too, though.
I've seen it in like corporate offices and stuff like that, like people who work really close together, like whether they were already naturally there, I don't know. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that can impact our cycles. And perhaps the lunar cycle is one of them.
Yeah, maybe.
Do you feel strongly about it? Like, do you notice?
I haven't really noticed for myself. And even when I read it in the book, I was like, I didn't realize that was a thing. And then sure enough, when I was doing more research on the lunar cycles for this episode, that's when I came across the evidence from the Clue app. And that's when I'm like, I didn't realize this was a thing that people actually thought that their cycle was affected by the moon. So I never had like a personal caveat to it, to be honest. But I do think it's kind of interesting to think about, though, because especially as females, it'd be kind of nice to know that we're connected to the divine universe in a certain sense, and especially connected to the moon, because technically it's kind of funny, the yin and the yang. Yang comes from the sun energy, which is kind of like a masculine energy, and the moon comes from more of a female energy, and not in like the sense of like gender, but more of like the softness from the female, and the masculine being more the more yang, which I thought was like really interesting. So then that's when I was kind of like, oh, well, maybe that's what it is, because you know, again, the hippie in me just loves the idea, but I struggle so much. And yeah.
Yeah, I think there's, with this and with many other things in the world, like, you take from it what you truly want to. And if you feel a strong pull to it and it makes sense to you and it helps you navigate your business and your life and your energy and how you're showing up, then amazing. Like, use it as a tool, you know, allow it to guide you in the way that it needs to. But like anything, don't hold so tightly to it that that's the only thing that you can like lean on. But if this is a new approach and a new way of looking at things and it's helpful, let's do it, you know,
right?
Jump on in.
And that's the thing too. I think sometimes we do get, and I know I definitely do this, you get too bogged down from the science, but if it makes you feel good and it's not hurting someone, just do it. I'm still following it to a certain extent. Like I said, I still do my new moon rituals, which is literally just yoga, meditating, and because I follow actually like new moon meditation sometimes too with it.
Yeah.
And then like following the intention, and it's kind of like goal setting in a sense where you set a goal and you get to it, except this is just a little bit more of a mindful intention. So instead of a goal to lose 20 pounds, it's a goal to become a better person, for yourself. And that's the other biggest thing too, is I think it's a good opportunity to look inwards to yourself, and something that we don't do often because it's so easy to put an outward appearance and, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. And if you're not happy with yourself, then it all starts with you, right? And I think we go back to this a couple times in the podcast, and I think that's what I really like about the whole cycle, is especially starting out with like the new moon ritual, and then even having the full moon. I've been starting to kind of slowly invite some of the rituals, and I know a lot of people, this just came up to me. I watch a lot of YouTube and one of them was like taking full moon baths. That's a ritual too, and it's more of like an opportunity to practice more self-care, with intention, in any sense, and especially if you feel connected.
More self-care into my life,
right? And plus, like, I love Sailor Moon, so I've always felt connected to the moon because of Sailor Moon. So
she's awesome, obviously.
Right? So that's my thing. My biggest takeaway is I'm still going to believe in it because I like it. Am I fully on board? No. But I'm also open to the wonder and the magic that the world does have. And that's my caveat. How about you, Julianne? How do you feel?
I love that. Similar, right? It's not the only thing that's going to guide my life, but I'm open to exploring it. I'm open to learning a lot more about it. Even just in this conversation tonight, I've learned a lot more about moons in general. And it's interesting. And like, I'm not a super scientific person, so I'm not going to get hung up on the science. I avoided all of the science classes I possibly could in high school because I was like, no, thank you. Give me the physics, give me the math. Bio and chem, didn't take a single one. And look where I am. It's fine. Didn't need it. If any kids are listening, well,
Sorry.
know what you want to do. I knew I wanted to get into business, and I didn't think that was necessary. So science is never something that I fall back on, to be honest.
That's fair.
Right or wrong, I don't know. But yeah, I'm interested in exploring this further and seeing where it takes me, and being open to just finding more of that yin, finding more of that being.
Yeah.
And allowing and seeing how it helps me navigate my business, my life, and myself.
That's awesome. Yeah. And we'd like to pass it off to you guys, too. Do you guys follow any particular traditions, rituals when it comes to the full moon? Do you believe in it? Have you noticed that things go a little bit crazy on the full moon? Like, we really want to know your guys' thoughts and opinions, because I think I'm not crazy to say that there's something crazy that goes on.
I think a lot of people will agree, but I'm also interested to hear from those who don't. So whatever your opinion is, whether it's aligned with ours or completely different, share and let us know. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone, and happy blue moon.
Enjoy it. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Thriving Tides. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected. And remember, don't fight the rip currents.